Welcome back to Ghostly Talk. This is Scott L.
This is Amber, and this show features all of my favorite things.
What are those, Amber? Food.
No, did we talk about food?
No, not even a morsel.
We talk about paranormal research and historical research.
Yeah.
And looking in the legends and why things are haunted and the stories behind them. And we do it with Jennifer Jones.
Yeah, super cool.
Who has a blog called The Dead History that she started back in 2012.
Uh-huh.
She also has a book called The Ghosts of Ogden. I said it wrong. I said something weird.
I did that during the show. I just,
Why is that? That's a hard word to say. I want to say Ogden, but it's Ogden. Anyway, enough slaughtering of her book title.
No, I have to look
The
at
Ghosts of
Ogden,
Brigham City, and Logan, Utah.
Yes.
And we'll have all this linked on our site, but you can Google Jennifer Jones, Utah, haunted book, whatever, and you'll find it on Amazon, anywhere books are sold, because it's through the History Press. So anyway, she was also...
The Dead History, I thought you said the Dead History.
Yeah, that's her blog, but she also wrote a piece for the Feminine Macabre.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Which is Amanda Woomer's project from Spook Eats.
We've had her on just recently.
Yeah. And she is working on, I think it just closed, the second volume. I think it's closed, like no more submissions, but it's been so successful that there's going to be, next thing you know, she'll be on like volume 10.
Yeah.
So, you know what we forgot to ask Jennifer about?
I know, I'm looking at the notes.
Creepy miniatures.
Yeah, we'll have to,
Creepy
next
miniatures.
time Jennifer's on.
Jennifer, if you listen to this intro, we need to ask you.
Totally dropped the ball
about
on
your project, your what you okay wait, because her bio says when she's not researching and writing, she can usually be found at home making creepy miniatures. What is a creepy miniature? What do you make? How scary is it?
What does it mean?
Please explain this to me.
What are they?
What is it?
What is it?
Yeah, why are you thinking of the rainbow guy?
I'm thinking of the rainbow. He
What does
passed
it
away.
mean?
God, did you know that guy passed away?
Yeah, he died a while ago.
What a bummer.
I think he was dead before that song got really popular.
That wasn't a song.
Well, he did. He
the guy, it was a
redid the
meme.
version.
No, you're thinking of somebody totally different. The guy who was tripping out on LSD.
That's right. Yeah, it was
saw
sort
the
of
rainbow.
Recent. Yeah.
Double rainbow.
Do you know where my brain went? It went to that guy
Which is like the happiest thing I've ever
does
seen.
the very nice version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
That guy. Yeah, we were talking about him last weekend.
I was thinking about him
Fire.
and then rainbows, but yeah, he's that
I'm
guy.
talking about the double rainbow guy who was tripping on LSD.
I know. I got confused.
What does it mean?
We do have to mention briefly that one of our previous guests, Barb Heiser, she passed away on June 11th of 2021.
She was also at Troy's conference.
She was, what makes Barb special, she was the longest running guest of the Haunted America Conference, and I think had been to almost every single one since Troy began.
Yeah.
I want to say like she missed one, but when we were there last, I think Troy gave her some type of award or I don't know, some perk or something.
Frequent flyer miles?
Yeah, I don't know, an acknowledgement just for like, wow.
She was very, very nice. It was really nice to talk to her.
So her specialty, she kind of looked at the paranormal through the eyes of a social worker.
Yeah.
And so on episode 73 from June 4th of 2019, we had her on the show and we talked about her work within the paranormal and giving it that social work spin.
Yeah.
So
rest in peace,
Barb.
Yeah,
You know,
all respect.
You know all the mysteries now.
Thanks for spending some time with us here, and we won't forget you.
And I know Troy's going to mention her at the conference this year that we won't be at, but we talk about that on the show.
I mean,
and now it makes me sad. Like as we're talking about, I'm like, oh,
well, you know, and just so you guys know, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Doug lost his father, Mr. Semig, Pete Semig. That was back at the end of April, actually.
Yeah, and just past Saturday, we just now had the memorial.
Well, yeah, and there was a lot that had to be done, and there was it was really quite amazing. Doug set up an entire gigantic tent in his front yard of his house and had a whole service. You know, it had some really nice people say some really great things. It was a lot of fun.
The juxtaposition was interesting because you looked around the neighborhood and there's like people playing lawn games. Someone over here is just
working
having
on their
a beer.
car in the garage.
And then there's like a full-on memorial service in a front yard at Doug's.
So we all broke bread, hung out for a while, and you know, I sent everyone's regards to Doug. He knows that everybody's thinking about him. But yeah, we did say our final farewell to Mr. Semig, who was who was a dear friend of our show when we were starting out in the old days. We did it in his basement, Mr. Semig's basement. He had and he was so supportive of what we did, and he was always like, every time we were done, we'd come up here. How was the show? That was it. Every time we'd come up there with his overalls on, standing there in his chair. So we're gonna definitely miss Mr. Semig. So this last couple of weeks have just been. I heard about Barb today. I'm just kind of bummed out, but I'm glad we had a really good show tonight to give you guys. And Jennifer was nice enough to spend some time with us, and we're really glad we got to do that with her. So please, please, please enjoy our discussion with Jennifer Jones.
Spotted Jennifer Jones like a creeper watching her at Troy Taylor's conference.
That's a hell of an icebreaker. Nice job.
No, I wasn't just standing in a corner staring at you, Jennifer. But I did notice. I like.
That's the sound she was making.
I like
audio from when she was doing.
I like good logos and clever names, and I was like, "Ooh, what is that? I like that logo. The Dead History. Ooh, cool.
Dead History.
Plus, I always have to plug this. I don't care. I'm like, looks like she wrote a book for History Press. I've written some books for History Press, so I'm always like, History Press. And then I later on looked you up. Of course, when you're at Troy Taylor's conference, Haunted America conference, isn't the biggest conference on the planet,
it's our
but
favorite,
you don't always get to say hello and mingle with everybody.
Right.
So anyway, that is where I first saw Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized how cool all of her stuff was because she has a blog called The Dead History that she started in 2012. And if you are a big Troy Taylor fan and you've listened to the show for a while, you do know and understand the importance and awesomeness that is history and hauntings and how they go hand in hand and then just make history that much more awesome. So welcome to the show, Jennifer, because we're going to talk about, I'm sure, history and hauntings and all kinds of other cool stuff.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
I want to ram that point home. I think I can't stress this enough. The longer we go down this path, this journey we're on, and I'm sure the journey that you're on also, Jennifer, history just becomes more and more important every year, it seems like, to this stuff, to hauntings and the paranormal, I think, in general. Mostly, I think, hauntings and stuff like that. I can't stress that enough. It just seems like it's more and more important every year. So you started a blog called The Dead History, right? First off, I know, let's start with the obvious questions here. What inspired you to start a blog like this? To get things rolling. And you've obviously been at it for almost 10 years. I'd like to know what made you want to start this and what's kept you going, more importantly, to be honest with you.
Well, so I got started because I was investigating the paranormal, and I started investigating back around 2007,
mm-hmm.
And I knew absolutely nothing, and so it was totally like learning as you go and all that. And I just I noticed that there was a severe lack of legitimate research into the background of locations, and it seemed like so many places would just accept stories from other people about things that supposedly happened, and some of them were just so blatantly untrue, and it just I don't know, I guess it bugged me. How can you go in to seriously investigate a location when you're using information that's not accurate? I couldn't see how that would lead to good results. And so it really started when I was investigating, and then, the investigating all the time on the weekends. And I was a mother, I am a mother, and I was working full time, and it just got too much. And I realized that I really loved the history part of it. And so I decided to step away from investigating all the time and just focus on writing about the real history behind urban legends, haunted places, interesting graves, just anything that's kind of creepy and morbid. And that's where my passion lies. And I guess that also answers your question. Like, that's why I've been doing it so long, is because I really enjoy doing it.
You know, I know I have a similar story, because I know for a time it's all I did. I was out in the field for years. Every weekend, sometimes every evening I had free from work and stuff like that. And I know over time I kind of just got tired of it. I got burned out on it, right?
Yeah.
But we always had the podcast. We've always had the podcast, you know, and that's something I know. Well, we took a little bit of a break, but I mean, we still do this thing. It's something that we just keep doing that. I think for the same reason. We just like doing this podcast the same way. Sometimes I think the older you get, and I notice this in my older years now, I have a lot of friends with kids, right? And I always find, like, when we get together, we don't get together and really do anything anymore. We sit around and talk. That's all we do, is just sit around and talk, right? And that applies to our case. And, you know, really the challenge getting together with some friends and just talking about stuff like the paranormal, for example, can be a challenge when you have kids, because kids don't want to sit around and talk. They want to just run around and go nuts and do crazy stuff. And they want their parents' attention. I'm sure you know this. So, yeah, like, I think in our case, for example, it is a thing of, we just like to talk about this stuff a lot. And I think that's just as productive in a field like this than actually going out and doing the legwork too. I think, you know, exploring ideas and things like that. And I don't think that's any different for a blog either that you're doing. You're exploring these ideas the same way. And I think that's, in this field, I think that's just as productive than going out into the field actually and taking pictures or taking audio. Wouldn't you think?
Well, for sure. And, you know, like, investigating has never been one of my strongest, like, suits, I guess. But they used to make fun of me because it would hit like 1:00 in the morning and I'm like, okay, I'm tired, I'm ready to go. And they said, you know, that I was an old lady because I was like, I couldn't stay up all night, and I still can't, to be totally honest with you. But, you know, everyone has their strengths in different things, and mine happens to be research and history, and not necessarily like the investigation angle, although I do it. It's just not like, there's people that are better than me. And I think when you have different people taking a look into different things, then everyone's going to come up with their own take on things. And when you can get together and talk about that, you learn more, you know, and you think of things differently that you might not have thought about, you know, originally until you talk to somebody else about it.
I agree. And you keyed in, I'm going to key in on another point you made that we talk about often here, and it is this obviously this idea of history. And the fact that I agree that I think there are very few people or sources out there or groups or whatever that are really focusing in on really researching and deep diving on the history of a location, for example, like just one location, right? Mm-hmm. I see this more often than not, and I'm not going to name any names, but they're all over the country. I think people, I call it manufacturing a haunt. That's my title for it. I think some people just take a building that looks just relatively creepy, and we all have that classic idea of what a creepy looking building looks like. I think it takes all different shapes and forms, but any building that is older than 50, let's just say any building that, and it don't have to be some old Victorian house.
Right.
It can be any old building that's maybe not been used or taken care of for 20 or 30 years. It's going to look creepy. I don't care what you say. It's going to look kind of creepy, I think. And I think people will take those buildings. I've seen this, and I'm sure you have too. And just say, okay, well, it's got to be haunted. It's old and creepy. You know, it's got no windows in it. It's this and that. And if there's been any research done at all, it's not verifiable. Bottom line, it's just not verifiable. That's if there was any research done at all. I'm willing to go on the record, and I'll probably get in trouble with some people to saying this, but some of it may actually be, what's the nice word to say on this, Amber?
I don't know.
Made up?
Oh, well, people make up stuff. We've talked about on the show, like the people that want to profit off of it because they have a bed and breakfast or a restaurant that has a legend. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so they build on that to bring people in, or some type of tourism, or it, you know, I don't know. And then people might then have a genuine experience and contribute to the canon of that place's haunted literature from that point on.
Fantastic. That's super cool.
I have a question for you, Jen. I'm curious, because this happened to me when I started looking into the research side of these haunts and legends and stuff, especially in Michigan, what was the first story that because you're in Utah, right?
Yeah.
So what was the first story that maybe you were super familiar with, you heard these stories about, but then when you did the research, you were like, that's totally wrong. Or you found something else completely like awesome to add to it that no one ever knew about?
There's a great one here, and it actually made the Coast to Coast show like years and years ago, because the people, I don't even know like the name of the team or anything, but they claim that they got this EVP of, it's a creepy EVP, but it was supposedly someone being drowned like in a bathtub, and you could hear, screaming, you could hear water, and it went on forever, like it was really long. And so that EVP was captured in a building here in Ogden called the Ogden Exchange Building. And the Ogden Exchange Building is in what used to be the stockyards. And it was basically the livestock exchange office building. It was built like back in the 20s or 30s. It's a very cool looking building. And it had sat, empty for quite some time. And so it had the classic creepy look to it. The area was kind of deserted, and spots of it was used like as a dump site. So that on its own was also kind of creepy. And these people claim that the Exchange Building had been used as basically a mental hospital. And my team actually had gone out there and investigated. And I don't really think we got anything. We might have gotten one EVP, but it wasn't, anything like the one that they had claimed to have gotten there years prior. And so when I started researching it, I very quickly realized that it was never a mental hospital. It was super easy to disprove. And in fact, what had happened was a lady had purchased it years ago and had turned it into a haunted house. And so the backstory for the haunted house was that this was I think they called it the Bellshire Hospital or Bellevue Hospital or something like that. Well, that over the years turned into, it was actually a mental hospital. And so now it's, terribly haunted because so many people died and were murdered there and all these crazy things. But, if you looked into it at all, you could tell like that was just completely not true. It had a pretty benign history to it. Not to say it's not haunted, but it's definitely not haunted in the way that, many, many people were claiming it to be. So.
That's kind of an extreme example too. I mean, a mental hospital, and then it wasn't even that. Like, because that'd be kind of more common history if it was, because those are pretty notorious places to begin with.
I guess the issue I have is, if you want to entertain people, right? And we all know that part of entertainment is embellishment, I guess, right? That's how you excite people. And if you want to have an experience like a horror movie or something like that, I mean, more power to you, right? But what I see it getting masked as is simply, well, yeah, was like in your case, this was a mental asylum at one time, and there's been all kinds of crazy things. So you're slathering on this version of nonfiction, I guess, on top of this to bring people in. And I don't want to dispel people from trying to make a living or try to start a business or something like that, but I think people are allowed to have opinions about it though too, and that's that's obviously my opinion. I'm not into it.
I'll be the first person. Like, yeah. I love all ghost stories. The fake ones, the real ones I love especially. And I don't have a problem with like people making up ghost stories. The only thing I have an issue with is making up ghost stories and then claiming it to be fact. That bugs me, but I think mostly it bugs me just because I'm a huge history nerd. So, I like to, I don't write about anything on my blog that I can't verify to some degree, because otherwise it's just another thing that you're putting out there that's, not true. I don't want to repeat stuff that's just bogus. So.
Right. And the internet's like a vast wasteland for like just corrupted ghost stories and miscellaneous weird things. And that's why I think it's still important for ghost researchers and lovers of history to still write books. Books you freeze that story in time. You can't delete it. I mean, I guess you could go through and edit subsequent editions if you needed to, but
it's not nearly as easy as going to a Wikipedia article and hitting the edit button.
No.
I mean, it's...
or just deleting it and it's gone off the internet because the person's done. They don't want to write anymore. They passed away or something like that. And then you got to go like dig around in the Internet Archive, and that doesn't even always work. So it
makes information, I mean, real information, less of an artifact, like a true artifact that when you commit it to paper, like you're talking about, like a book, the internet makes information way more dynamic.
You can time it.
Yeah.
You can date it.
Well, no, and dynamic means it can change on the fly. Right. And that's what you're talking about right
and
there.
And I just was working on a story about a monster in Michigan, and I have printouts. I have so much stuff printed out from the past 20 years. And I had an old Wikipedia page about this monster from 2007. And I pulled it out of my file, and I'm just kind of referencing it. And then I started looking things up, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right with stuff I've looked at now. And then I go look at the new Wikipedia page. Oh, it's completely different because the person in 2007 decided to write a book about it that was fictional and then alter the Wikipedia page briefly so it suited his needs. Like that's the part that's like, oh, newspeak.
That's just disgusting.
You know, like 1984-ish. Like, you can't change. No, that's why, like, you can't even, I think in school, like, use Wikipedia as a valid source in any of your papers. Like, it might prompt you to look up or go somewhere else, or like you have to look at their sources, but no. So, viva la book.
So yeah, I guess that's, that's, I think, what the importance of this research you're talking about and what you do, Jennifer, is. And it's obvious you dig a little deeper than just hitting, obviously hitting Wikipedia articles. And I think that's what needs to be really done. That's the point of this. That's
or the Shadowlands. Jennifer, when you were in 2007, when you were like initially ghost hunting, did you guys use the Shadowlands to find places in Utah?
Oh, 100%. and you know what's funny is it makes me laugh now because I'll go back every now and then and just look and see, like, for Utah mostly, but I'll look and see what's on there. And just so many of them, back then I didn't know any better, but now I look and I'm just like, oh my God, those are just so terrible.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating.
It was.
I know when we was young, I mean, I thought it was the coolest thing
when
ever.
It was new, it was like, oh my God. And then people added fake stuff to it all the time.
Yeah.
I know people who did that just to test out what would happen. That's an interesting experiment in itself, but and some things were somewhat valid and gave you leads and you could look into it. I don't know, but it's still there. I mean, they still keep it up. Bless them.
Bless them. Now let's talk about the book for a second. The Ghost of, and I'm going to totally slaughter this because I slaughter everything. The Ghost of Ogden, Brigham City, and Logan, Utah. Did I get it right?
Yes, good job.
Oh my God, I did something. I did a thing today.
Yeah,
Yay!
You pronounced.
Let's talk about a little bit about. I mean, what got you started on the book?
So I am friends with another fellow author who had written for History Press, and she just was like, I think she was on Facebook one day and was like, you need to write a book. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start with that. And she's like, here's the information, contact them. And so I did. I sent an email and they were like, send over a idea or whatever. I can't remember how they called it. And so I did. And then they gave me a contract. And then I was just like, holy crap, what have I just done to myself? Because I think I had like a year, to write it. And it was way, way, way harder than I was expecting, but I got it done and I'm really proud of it. I don't know. I'd like to write more, but my personal life's just been crazy. So hopefully I have more in me to get out there eventually.
I don't think people realize how difficult it is to put together a presentation like that on paper. Obviously Amber has done a handful of books and I see what she's gone through.
I'm working on one right now that's due in 2 months.
Yeah. And I see what she's going through. To really do it, I think there's ways to write books now. And I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago, as far as like research and pulling up information and trying to really dig. There's, even books though, and we were talking about how great books are a second ago, but I've seen this myself too. Some books that are out there, especially in the paranormal field, they'll have, what is it, a bibliography?
Yeah.
I'm so far out of reading books anymore.
Yeah. That is correct.
A bibliography, but you'll see sightings in there that don't. I mean, a lot, and it's one thing I've seen with a lot of books is a lot of the things they cite are from the internet itself.
So the internet is a valid source of information now, better than it was when we were kids and it was kind of a new thing. But I do still cringe when I look at books that have been written.
We shouldn't be critiquing like this.
No,
I guess,
but there was. I'm not going to state like titles and authors and stuff.
Oh, this is terrible.
There was a book recently that I noticed, and it wasn't like it was poorly written or anything, but every single source was just an internet source, and it's not like they were horrible.
Yeah.
Just because, but I was like, like it hurts, like, and maybe that's part of my old like getting older, like because I was in the kid of the 80s and 90s.
No, we didn't do it.
I'm a zennial, kid of the 80s and 90s, and we still had one foot in book world and paper and pen, and another world in going into computers. Mm-hmm. So it's like I still have this distrust of sometimes that I don't know, or growing up where you couldn't actually use that as like all of your sources.
Yeah.
Like that was no.
Can we talk about a couple stories from the book, Jennifer?
Sure.
The floor is yours.
Okay.
Just throw one at us.
Yeah. She already mentioned the
Ghost
Ogden Exchange building.
Oh, okay.
But was a good question for the book. Did you just investigate haunted places, or did you explore other topics like monsters, UFOs, like anything else bizarre?
Not really in that book. The book mostly focuses on haunted places. Okay. I did go into two urban legends that are some of my favorites, but none of the, I haven't really gone a whole lot into monsters and stuff yet. And the funny thing is there's not a lot of monsters in Utah. There's some Bigfoot sightings, actually some pretty creepy ones in some of the camping areas around here. But there are a ton of UFO sightings, so maybe I should branch out into that a little bit. You guys got
Skinwalker Ranch over there. It's like it's like the hotbed.
I know that. It's funny. Like I always tell people, I don't get scared in spooky buildings. Like ghosts don't scare me at all. But UFOs, at least the kind of stuff that they talk about at like the Skinwalker Ranch, I find that absolutely terrifying.
It is terrifying because it's like it's like everything in any paranormal situation is happening in this location. And historically, it's been going on for a long time because the Native Americans in that you went to base and talk about everything that's been happening there. And it goes back in their legends. So it's like, that's creepy. Like the cattle mutilations and I don't want to live there.
Everyone, I get asked a lot if I've been out there, and I've been in Vernal. I have not been to Skinwalker Ranch. I would totally go to Skinwalker Ranch. I don't think I would want to spend the night out there. I definitely would never camp out there. I think people that camp out in that area are just absolutely insane, but whatever. But it's, that whole part of the state, it just kind of has a weird vibe. It's just a little bit strange. I don't know how else to describe it.
The only time I've been to Utah, I think, is Zion National Park in Utah.
Yeah, it's down south.
So I've been there, and then we went to the Four Corners, so I stood in it, with one.
Well, you were in Skinwalker territory.
What? Was I? Oh, I didn't know that at 14.
I think they call it the highway to hell is down there. It used to be
Oh. Little did I know
you
at age 14.
survived to tell the tale today,
did.
Amber.
We were probably bored. We were probably like, oh my God, let's put our headphones on. Let's get some snacks. Who cares? Whatever.
You didn't even know you were there.
Me and Chrissy just wanted to go to gift stores as kids. Just wanted to go shopping. And where are we going to go eat next? Little did we know we're in the midst of a paranormal hot spot. I wish I would have. I was into this stuff when I was a kid, but not to that much. Jen, were you into stuff like this when you were little too?
Yeah, for sure. It started really young for me because I saw a shadow figure in my house. And, I am a child of the 80s. And so then Ghostbusters came out and it was just one thing after another. And I was hooked. So I've always been strange as far as that goes. Like, I'm sure my mother was like, what is wrong with this child?
Did anyone else in your home experience shadow people, or were you the only one?
No, I was like the only one. And I remember I told my mom, you know, what I saw, and she kind of just like poo-pooed it away. And then the next day or a couple days later, I overheard her talking to a friend on the phone and was telling her friend what I had said to her, and then was like, you know, the people that lived in this house before we bought it, they had a young child that died of SIDS in the house. And so then I was like, you know, well, great. Now I know that.
Yeah, sometimes I would rather not know stuff, especially if you live there. But odds are, the older your house, I heard a statistic the other day that said if your house is over 100 years old, statistically someone has died in your home or even been laid out in your home.
Well, I think a lot of people... I was talking to someone over the weekend about this, and this gentleman was talking about how he found out there was a hanging in the barn of his, one of the barns on his property.
You think that was true?
I'm sure it was.
Okay.
And
side note, whatever.
That's an off-air question, by the way. Thanks.
Sorry.
So, but we got into that conversation, and I've read a few articles and other experiences. You'd be surprised how many houses have had people die in them for natural or unnatural causes. I mean, even 100 years old, there's a good chance if that structure is still there, someone has expired or crossed over in that structure. That don't surprise me at all, really.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they didn't necessarily die in the house, I mean, back then, a lot of times, the funerals, like you said, they were laid out in the house for days. So...
Gross.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad we don't do that one anymore.
The living room.
So
thing?
we were talking
the
about
living room.
The living room.
The living room.
So we were talking about your book. So you mentioned urban legends. I love urban legends, and you mentioned some of your favorites. So I'd love to hear some urban legend from Utah.
Okay, so my all-time favorite is in the Ogden City Cemetery. And it revolved around the grave of a 15-year-old girl. Her name was Florence Grange. And it's known as Flo's grave. And, all urban legends have like a procedure that you have to go through, a ritual in order to like have the event take place. And so with this one, you need to go at night, drive towards her headstone. Her headstone's right next to one of the roads in the cemetery. You flash your lights 3 times at her headstone, and then her ghost will rise up out of the headstone and float towards your car. And then the whole story behind it is she was waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up and take her to a dance, and she was hit by a car, is how she died. That's how the story goes. Or there was one that she was like choked on a piece of candy or something like that. And so when I started the Dead History, she was the first urban legend that I researched. And it's really, Utah's great for like having records easily available online. I'm a huge introvert, so if I can do it online, I'm all over it.
Yep.
And so like the death certificates, newspapers, all sorts of things. And so it turns out she died from the Spanish flu. And one of the things that I really like to do when I write about haunted places is I like to kind of give some humanity back to the people that are supposedly haunting locations, because when it comes down to it, every ghost, if you believe in ghosts, then they were once a living person with their own life. And I think that's overlooked a lot. And so I just kind of wanted to tell her story, her history a little bit. And so what I do in the book is I'll put out the legend, and then I'll, put out like what really happened. And so I was able to find, her death certificate. I actually even found much later, I found some pictures where her family had saved, she died around Christmas time, and her family had saved the Christmas presents that she was going to give to her siblings. And so I just thought that was so incredibly sad. So she died in 1918, and here it is, 2021, and they still have hung on to her Christmas presents.
Wow.
The 3 headlight flashes. That's something
Yeah.
I want to, and obviously this is an urban legend. We've specified that this is an urban legend. We mentioned the Shadowlands a couple minutes ago, and this is one of those ones that pops up a lot. I would notice this in the Shadowlands, and and urban legends are urban legends, right? Have you noticed? I don't know, Jennifer. I want to ask you that. Have you noticed? Have you seen the headlight thing in other urban legends? I mean, not even in Utah, maybe, but with other stories from around the country. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's really common. The headlights, and usually it's in groups of 3, and I've always kind of figured that it probably had something to do with like religious stuff and like the Trinity, and some people say, oh, if you're seeing stuff at 3:00 in the morning, it's because of this, and so I think it in the urban legends it just adds like another layer of creep factor to it. So there's like the flashlights, and then another really common one is like circling a headstone a certain amount of times. There's a headstone up in Logan that the ritual there is that you circle the headstone, at midnight. And if you do it on a full moon, it's even better. And so those are super common.
Yeah, we have a legend here, not too far from where where the studio is here. It's the legend of Morrow Road, and any of our old school, longtime listeners are familiar with this one. It's Morrow Road, and the rough story goes basically a woman. There's a couple of stories that shows you how how all over the place it really is and how vague it could be. One of them I got was basically a hitchhiking woman was hit on the side of the road, and she haunts the road now. The other one I got was the more intricate story was, there was some type of family dispute. A woman had a baby out of wedlock, and out of utter grief, she basically went and murdered her child and herself by the river, and now she haunts. She walks up and down Morrow Road looking for her child, basically. Right. So and those are very, very high levels of the story, very quick takes on the story.
Mm-hmm.
But what they say about that is you have to go to a certain spot on Morrow Road, which we never really figured that out. They never really said what spot on Morrow Road you had to go to, but you pull up with your car and you flash your headlights 3 times. And what you're supposed to see is like an orb, a glowing ball. And it's supposed to come. This is on the Shadowlands too, I think. It actually is supposed to come towards your car. I'm sorry, I omitted. I totally forgot a part of this. When you pull up to whatever spot on the road, we went up to several spots on this road, by the way. You're supposed to stop the car, actually, take the keys out, and put them on the dash of the car. Then you flash the headlights. You flash the headlights 3 times. And what they say, if I remember correctly, on the Shadowlands was you'll see this glowing ball coming at you. And by the time you go to put your keys back in the ignition and start your car, you should be able to see this glowing ball in the back seat of your car, which, of course, the creep factor comes in. Like, oh, boy, it's in the car now. We tested this out. I can say now we tested this out like nearly 20 years ago now and filmed it. And, like most things, when you film them like that, you don't get anything. Well, we tried it a few times. So, I mean, that's another one of those stories. Very interesting regardless, right? But I wanted to ask you about that, if you've noticed that too, that there is like the 3 flashing headlight thing we see more often than not. It sounds like, yeah, you've seen them too. That's cool. What about some ghost stories from the book? I mean, or a ghost story from the book, whatever one you want. The Ghost of Tony Joe Henry, that's a story from the book. Am I correct?
Yeah, that story is actually from the Feminine Macabre.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
perfect. I was going to ask about that because we've had Amanda on the show.
I was going to say, we've talked to Amanda
a couple times, and we were I was a giant fan of that book when it came out because I'm like, yes, this needs to happen. More female voices, like just putting their thoughts. And I like the fact that it's a collection of stories about paranormal related, but it doesn't have to be certain focuses. It could just be your thoughts, opinions, whatever. But whatever your specialty is, write about it. And I'm thrilled that Amanda's going to have a second volume coming out soon too. So anyway, I was going to ask you what you wrote for that one.
Yeah,
Yay.
so I wrote about Tony Joe because I just kind of stumbled upon her story. I really, really like true crime. And so if I ever can find like a a situation where it's a haunting combined with some true crime, that's like my all-time favorite to write about. And so I started kind of reading about her, and then the more I like dug into what happened with her and her history and everything, the more I was just hooked. And so I was really excited to do that. I've never been to Louisiana. Luckily it takes place in the Calcasieu Parish Courthouse, and the court clerk is just ridiculously friendly and helped me so much, giving me, you know, some information on different things that have happened to them there. And so it just, I had a lot of fun writing that, and I was really excited to be a part of that. I think she's great, and I think it's a great thing that she's doing, and I'm really excited to see the next book that comes out. So
yeah, and she has hundreds of people sending stuff in to be part of it, so it's not like she's struggling to like, oh, you know, I'm trying to put this volume out, and like I got 3 entries and one's like poorly written. Like we've got a ton of people submitting stuff, so it's awesome. It's really,
I think
it's cool.
It's cool. It's cool because it's not just like you said. It's not just one thing. It's like, oh, you want to write about tarot cards? Cool. You
right.
know,
yeah.
You want to write about ghosts? Also cool. Like, so that's nice.
So you're going to be presenting at the Haunted America conference this year, correct?
I am. Yes. Are you guys going to be there?
Normally we are.
Yeah.
Normally we are, but when we kind of
But COVID.
When we made the decision to kind of pull out this year, stuff was still like wonky. Scott and I both got COVID. We were fine. But then we had gotten shots and all that good stuff. And we're just like, I don't know. I just don't know if we're ready to like go plunge into a group of people yet.
Yeah.
So we just said, Troy, next year.
Yeah. And, you know,
now I'm feeling more confident. Like, oh, God, we probably could have. But
not if the cat's out of the bag. You know, Troy was really, really understanding about that, too. We talked to him about that a while ago. And said, look, we'd like to just take the year off and let things settle down some more. And yeah, you know, just because things are, I don't want to go down the COVID rabbit hole, but I mean, just because things are changing at such a rapid rate, I still have my opinion on this too.
Yeah.
Just because it's changing fast doesn't mean things are 100,000% better.
I'm just not ready to test the efficacy of the vaccine just yet.
Yeah.
Like,
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, Troy was very, very understanding about that. And he really deserves a thanks from us.
And last year, I remember Troy did, it wasn't a super long thing, but he had each of the speakers. And I remember, I think it was Jennifer I think it was you and your husband. You guys did a little segment.
Probably.
Yeah, you guys did a little segment, kind of a preview of what you're going to be talking about. And so Troy kind of did like a little something last year, but, you know, this year it's finally happening, which is great. And I know he's not letting more people into the door. So anybody listening saying, oh, I should go this year, I don't think you can get any more tickets. They're not for sale.
He caps it at a certain amount.
Well, and especially with this whole situation, I think he's just like, nope, no one at the door. So now you have to plan. You have to plan with us next year if you want to go.
Well, and you are what you're presenting, and I don't think you mentioned that, Amber. Is Strange Graves and the People Within,
which I love because I'm a cemetery nerd.
So, I mean, not that we want you to give us the whole presentation here, but I'm curious about what this revolves around as far as this idea of Strange Graves and the People Within.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a cemetery nerd, or if you've spent any time with creepy stuff on the internet, you might have come across the headstone for the victim of the beast, 666. So like that's an example of one I'll be talking about. And she's actually a local grave down in Salt Lake City. And so what I'm going to do is just, you know, like the man who died eating library paste. He's from the Goldfield Cemetery in Nevada. I'll be talking about him. So just like strange and unusual stories. So whether it's because of what's on their headstone, like with the victim of the beast and the library paste guy, or there's a really interesting one from Idaho that I don't want to give anything away because I want to keep some stuff.
Yeah.
Then tell us to shut up and quit asking dumb questions. No, I understand. We don't want that out. Yeah.
But
they're weird, you know.
Yeah.
But their stories are super, in my opinion, they're super interesting. So I'm really excited about that. There's one that it's a dog's grave at Fort Bridger, which is in Wyoming, and you know, so there's nothing normal about what I'm going to be speaking about, but I hope that people find it interesting because I've put a lot of work into tracking down information that you won't easily find online or anywhere else. For example, like a picture of the dog that's buried in this grave, and the dog died in like 1870 something.
That's
so it's
awesome.
not like a new thing.
Cool.
So.
I love stuff like this because I think it can inspire people to get more excited about their local cemeteries. They're outdoor museums. A lot of them have amazing.
I never even thought about it. I never even heard of that, honestly.
What?
That's actually a really great way to put that.
An outdoor museum?
Well, it is an outdoor museum.
It is. It's an outdoor museum. I mean, you have amazing art, you have history, you have everything that's in any indoor museum is out there. And sometimes you just have to spend time looking a little harder in like pick an unusual grave. Or in my hometown, they called it the witch's grave. And it had
the witch's grave. You gotta say
like
that.
the witch's grave. That's the only way I can do it. It had like a pentagram on it. But really what it was the ladies' auxiliary unit of the Masons. And so they have that star symbol. But kids that didn't know any better were like, oh my God, she's a witch. And so just weird stuff like that. There's a grave that has two. I love the old stones that still have portraits glued into the old stone.
Yes.
And if someone hasn't picked them out and you can go, wow, those were the people buried here. Or if you get this old stones that sometimes tell a story. So these Pekulik twins were from Chicago, came to Grand Haven, Michigan, which is Long Lake, Lake Michigan, and ended up getting stuck in a seiche, which is an extremely rare thing on Lake Michigan. It's essentially a tidal wave on our inland lakes. So a seiche came out, took a bunch of people with it, and both of them got sucked into it. And you wouldn't know this story unless you looked it up and was like, wait, what is this, huh? But it's just the coolest. And we do cemetery tours in my hometown. We have a true crime angle because it's this. I don't get people, but they're accepting of talking about all the horrible misdeeds that these people did that are buried there. But bring up a ghost story and we're just disrespecting the dead. You know, it's because it's a conservative area, but we can talk about true crime to the end of the world. So it just shows you how popular that is still.
And I've always thought there was some type of relation with true crime and the paranormal.
Well,
I've always thought there was a healthy relationship with them. I don't understand why people
there is. I mean, half the ghost stories out there start with someone getting killed or a car accident here or some horrible crime that leaves the poor ghost, wailing for all eternity in that location. So
it seems like a lot of ghost stories and cases that are out there of the paranormal, they come from true crime. That's why I talk about the relation.
A lot of them. I think there's that idea of place memory that a location can kind of get haunted in its own way by the energy left behind. So like when something like a crime happens, it's a little more heavier than someone winning the lotto. Like it just stays there, like just gross. And I don't know. I think people can pick up on that. Jennifer, since you've started investigating, because 2007's been a while, and I had different ideas back when I got started, which was around,
1827.
No, like 2002. Like around 2002, 2001, somewhere around there. My ideas have shifted a ton about what I think ghosts are, what creates a haunting, where things are heading. What's something that you thought when you got started that you've come to change your mind on or look at in a different light?
I think when I first started doing it, I expected more of what you would call intelligent haunts, where you would get direct interaction and things like that. And that definitely has never been the case for the locations out here that I investigate. There's one or two, but mainly they're all the residual type. And I have a friend who hates when people categorize types of hauntings, but how else would you describe it? I'm not really sure. So, I think that I've come to really believe that there has to be something to the thought, like you just said, of place memory, because it seems like the locations where just terrible things have happened, whether it was, murders or just an unusual amount of death, or jails. Jails are some of my favorite places to investigate. Hospitals, obviously. And I think there has to be something to that. So.
Nope, I agree. You've been to a lot of places because I was perusing your website and
You're stalking you again.
I was stalking you on the internet, and there was a ton of places you've been to, mostly on the West Coast, which we have not been to any of.
No,
and,
we tend to stay on this side of the country.
We're Midwest,
Midwest.
East Coast, South, and so we haven't really got to venture out to a lot of the cool haunted places out west. We know that a lot of these places, especially the ones that open themselves up to tourism, haunted tourism, can be sometimes overrun by overzealous people looking for a quick thrill. They've watched ghost hunters for their entire life. They're huge fans of Zach Bagans.
Well, they want to be entertained.
And they're looking for entertainment. Just like you ride a roller coaster at Cedar Point, it's going into a haunted location with the lights off is thrilling. What has been some of your favorite public haunts that you've gone to?
Actually, we were in San Diego about a week ago, and I was super excited because I finally made it to the Hotel Del Coronado that I hadn't been there since I was like a little kid. And I was kind of upset because we wanted to stay there, but they were full. But when we got there, we realized it's because like pretty much the entire hotel is being renovated. And so I'm glad we didn't stay there because I think it would have been disappointing. There was so much of it that you couldn't even get to.
Yeah.
But one of the places that we went to, and it wasn't even really because it's rumored to be haunted, just because it's cool, was the USS Midway. And let me tell you, like, if you've never been on an aircraft carrier, and especially one that's supposed to be haunted, they are creepy as hell. And this one was full of mannequins, like dressed up as sailors and things, doing different things like serving food or sitting in an office chair, cutting hair, whatever it is. And that place, man, it was, I couldn't imagine walking through that ship in the dark.
Well, these are obviously displays.
Especially with mannequins.
Well, these were the mannequins were for display
Were
purposes.
they bad mannequins? Like they look kind of creepy, like just bad facial expressions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think they were made, probably like early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, they're bad then.
But they were like so bad, they were awesome. And there was a couple of them that actually moved and made sounds. Like one guy was getting his teeth drilled in the dentist chair.
Oh, come on.
And and so that ship is said to be haunted. They're pretty tight-lipped about like what actually happens on board. And I tried my best, and I could not really get any of the docents to open up to me about it. But I can't. Like, it does not surprise me if it does have activity, and it was so cool. Like, I think we spent like 2 hours there, just walking around the different decks and stuff, and it's just massive. So.
When you went to Gettysburg, and we love Gettysburg. We've been there 1,000 times. What year did you first go to Gettysburg, and what was your impression of it? Because it's like the ghost hunters' mecca, like even back in the day.
I know. I love it. So my aunt actually lives about 45 minutes away from there.
Okay.
So I've been a few times, and I'm trying to think. The first time I went there with like ghosts in mind was probably early 2000s, like 2002 or 3.
Yeah, that's like the time we were there. The laughter.
Yeah. And like I think we did a ghost tour one year, and then we did, they would tell spooky stories in the Jenny Wade basement, the Farnsworth house basement. And so I'd actually taken my kids with me to that one because it was like a family thing. So I've never like full on ghost hunted there, but man, would I love to. And my aunt actually, when my cousin was younger, he was in like Boy Scouts, and so my aunt would help out, and they would often do like their Boy Scout camping out in Gettysburg. And she has some freaky stories of things that she had happen to her out there. And so like, I fully believe it's probably one of the top 5 haunted places in the whole world. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
What kind of experiences did she have while camping?
She, I can't remember. I think she said that they would hear what sounded like soldiers like walking through the woods on the edge of the campground. And I believe they even saw something, and I can't remember if it was like a full-bodied apparition or if it was a light, but they saw something go from like the field into the tree line and then disappear.
I feel like that is one of the number one places that people do see full-bodied apparitions, and in like action mode. running, doing something, yelling, and hearing things. Instead of seeing just like a partial, like, oh, we saw someone from the waist up or we saw just an arm. Like, nope, I have had more stories from people tell me that and out of nowhere, like, and during the day, which are that's even the best, like a daytime one. Like, oh.
Well, I mean, and what could be some reasons for that? Just to have a little brainstorm here.
Place memory.
Yeah, I mean, massive amounts of trauma, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I tend to think, like, I think it has to do with, like your emotional state,
oh, yeah.
you know? And so, I mean, when you think about just the intense fear that these guys had at the moment of their death, like, it was just that I can't imagine much that's worse than the situation that they were in, because it was, like, horrible. And so many people were killed on that day in such a small area, you know?
Yeah. And one of the things I think people neglect to really understand, well, I guess if you go to Gettysburg a few times, you'll understand this, but that method of war that was happening at that time was not surgical war. That was brutal, battery type war. I mean, they call the battalions and battery. Well,
There's a reason they don't do that anymore.
Well, yeah, it was messy, and I don't know any nice way to say that. It was very messy, and it wasn't a matter. You know, I have friends, people I know who have done time in the military. They've done tours, and they're like, "Well, yeah, I got shot, and they got me to the clinic and got the bullet out, and I'm fine now. I got a permanent scar on my arm or some muscle damage, but other than that, I'm perfectly fine." Back then, if you took a bullet shot, the likelihood you were just going to lose your leg. It was not a matter of any type of good surgery.
Well,
they just said, well,
surgery.
the surgery was they were going to cut your leg off or your arm off or whatever it might be that you got shot at
without anesthesia.
Yeah,
they get you drunk. They just get you drunk. Some of those stories I love hearing out there, they would literally just get you drunker than hell. They pour whiskey down your throat.
I think a lot of stuff that we have to this day in the surgical field was learned out on battlefields like Gettysburg. Because you had to learn how to do stuff fast.
On the
I
fly.
think that's where super glue came from. Because it was actually used to glue wounds together. It wasn't just to glue stupid things
I want
together.
that verified.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, I want that one verified. I don't know.
I'm telling you, super glue. I'm going to look it up right now. I'm looking it up.
We're doing this on the air. Wonderful. So, but I know that's one of the. I always like to ask that to people as far as why is Gettysburg, let's call it the Ghost Hunters Disney World, basically. And I think there are a lot of reasons. I think any battlefield, frankly, not even, along with Gettysburg, of course, there was stuff that happened there, especially at that time in our history. And, you put the finger on it, Jennifer, these men and women, I'd say, too, the fear, because it wasn't surgical. It was like, okay, the likelihood of me going out here of dying is very high, and it's not going to be in a pretty way. It's going to hurt, right? So that piece right there alone is going to leave some type of impression on the environment. Amber's jumping up and down in the corner here, freaking out.
My memory does serve me correct. Now, again, it was with war. It wasn't Gettysburg or Civil War, but super glue was first used in the Vietnam War in a spray form as a homostatic agent to temporarily patch the internal organs of injured soldiers until conventional surgery could be performed.
Patch the internal organs?
Glue people back together.
Their skin.
Whatever they needed to glue. It could be, that's what they did. So I knew my memory wasn't faulty on that one.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
But okay, all right. I'm really confused right now. What happened?
I don't know.
No, but I think that is a big thing with Gettysburg, especially, is just that it's a soup of all those things. But I think the main ingredient of the soup is just that fear element, that people going basically marching to die, which is what makes a lot of those monuments, not only the paranormal ideas, the stuff that happened that people have seen out there, but I think just some of the monuments you go to, they're powerful. Because you read, I've been to some monuments there and sat down and looked at these plaques, and it's like, okay, right here, 5,000 men died one morning. I'm like, that's just not something that happens every day.
Right.
And imagine being a property owner at that time and just watching this go down on your land. Like, okay, what do I do now? It's a very confusing thing. Amber, you're...
I want to know your advice for anybody that's listening that is realizing, God, I'm not a good I'm kind of a crappy ghost hunter, and I need to research better. If they want to know what they can do, especially if, like, I agree with you. I'm an introvert too sometimes when it comes to stuff. If I can find it on the internet and dig deep, and I don't have to travel 4 hours to a library somewhere hidden in a cave, like, all the better. So what are your tips for people that want to improve their research skills better, especially within this kind of realm of research that we all do?
I think the number one thing, and it's where I always start off, is newspaper archives.
Yeah.
And I have some that I do pay for, but there are a lot that are out there for free. The best way to find it, like, in your state, is just Google, like, for instance, Colorado historic newspapers, or Maryland digital newspaper archives, whatever, like, your state, and then those words. And oftentimes you'll see that there's quite a few that are out there that they've already digitized. They have the Library of Congress one. I don't really like using that one because it's just not user friendly at all.
It's called Chronicling America, and it's clunky as hell. It's not user friendly. It's cool, but it's not fun to use.
No, I'll use it if I get desperate. Like, if I just can't find anything, that's like my last resort. Usually you can find, there's some states that there aren't any, or there's very few, but most states have something online. And then, start with your state archives online. A lot of them will have, tons of photographs. Sanborn fire maps are freaking fantastic for, like, dating locations, because they'll show you where they were throughout the years, and you'll be able to tell, like, when things were added onto or changed or whatever. Or, like, for example, if you're investigating a building that sat on this site in 1910, but there was something or possibly a building there before, look at the Sanborn fire maps. If they have a fire map from 1880, you'll know what was on that site, if anything, in 1880. So those are one of my favorites too. And they're free. You don't have to pay anything.
So if anybody wants to find you, Jennifer, where do they find you? Where do they get your books? How can they support you? Tell us all the good stuff.
It's super easy. Pretty much everywhere I am, thedeadhistory.com. Don't forget the in front of it. And that goes for, like, Facebook and Instagram. My books are available online. If you want them signed and personalized, you can buy them from me directly. But they're also available, like, Amazon, and I don't know if my Utah book would be in, like, other local stores, but Barnes and Noble and things like that, at least here in Utah. So
cool.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Sweet. And if you're going to be at Haunted America, you're going to see Jen's super awesome Strange Graves and the People Within presentation. So enjoy that for us, because we won't be there.
We won't be there, and we're bummed.
Yeah. And anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had fun.
Ghostly Talk!
Version 3.0. Didn't even ever sounded so good.